Hey there and welcome to the BikeSafe Bike Shop. You're probably here because your tires are flat as a pancake. But no worries, even if you left your bike out a long time ago in a galaxy far away, we're going to show you what to do to fix it. Now I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, but I'm also going to try to go over every single possibility you might actually find out there. And we're going to be using simple household tools with exception to a pair of bicycle tire levers, which you can just about get anywhere online. And if any of this seems a little bit too daunting, your local bike shop will be more than glad to help you out. So without further ado, let's go to step 1. Do you really need to replace your tubes? If you left your bike 3, 4, 5, however many months ago, and the last time you used it the tires were okay, chances are those flat tires are just flat from air leaking out of the tubes. It's a natural thing with butyl rubber that they lose air over time, so you may be able to get away with just filling them up. Now when doing this you have to keep a couple of things in mind. For instance, with big balloon tires like these, the valve stem sometimes tries to retreat back into the rim. You have to push against the tire to press the valve back through the hole. And if the valve kinks to one side, you'll have to reset it in the rim. An offset valve will rub against the rim and will eventually leak. Now if your tires are obviously dry rotted, don't try any of this. The tire will likely split apart and the tube will explode with a big kaboom! You want to fill the tire up to the pressure listed on the sidewall. These big balloon tires have a max pressure of 35 psi, but many tires go up to 65 psi and some road tires even past that. Don't take a guess. As you fill the tires, make sure the tire bead seats correctly against the rim. If the bead is bulging off the rim, or if the tube is pinched between the rim and the tire, tuck the tube back into place and reseat the tire on the rim. If you can get the tires inflated to spec, put the bike to the side for about 10 minutes. Some slow leaks take this long to manifest themselves. If the tubes hold pressure, great, go ride your bike. But if they didn't, now's the time to change the tube. Before you can remove the front tube, you'll need to remove the front tire. And to do that, you'll need to make sure your brakes aren't in the way. If you have caliper brakes, open up the quick release to expand the caliper. Not all caliper brakes have quick releases, and if so, loosen the pinch bolt to release the brake cable. If you have V-brakes, pull the brake noodle out of the caliper arm to release the cable. Cantilever brakes are very similar. Undo the yoke cable. And if you have drum or roller brakes, undo the pinch bolt at the end of the cable and pull the adjuster free of its slot. And if you have a generator hub, now's the time to disconnect the wire leads to it. And if you have no front brakes or disc brakes, you can start removing the wheel right now. There are a few different ways your wheels may be secured to the bike. You may have a nut with a serrated edge, a nut with a washer, a nut with a tabbed security washer, or a quick release lever. To remove a wheel with nuts, undo each side until the nuts clear the fork tabs, and remove the wheel from the fork's dropouts. That's the horseshoe-shaped part of the fork here. If you have tabbed washers, make sure they've been pulled free of the slots. And for bikes with fender stays attached directly to the axle, you'll have to remove the nuts and washers entirely. To undo a quick release, rotate the cam lever from the closed to the open position, then partially unscrew the adjuster on the other side until the wheel clears the fork tabs. Conventional bicycle wheels have an outer tire which encases a separate rubber inner tube. We need to remove at least one edge of the tire so we can inspect the tube. To do this, we're going to need those tire levers. The levers fit between the edge of the rim and the tire bead so you can pull the tire over the edge of the rim. If the tire is fairly loose, you may only need a single tire lever to get it off. Some tires may be really tight though and require that you pull the bead over with two tire levers, one locked into a spoke to hold the tire in place and the other to get the tire off the rim. Once you have one side of the tire off, pull the tube out of the tire, but leave the valve in place. You do this so you can easily match the puncture to whatever caused it. Fill the tube just enough to listen for air hissing out of it. If you find a hole on the top of the tube, check the inside of the tire for the source of the puncture. If the hole is on the bottom of the tube might have been pinched due to underinflation, but also check the rim and rim strip for obvious sharp edges. And what is the rim strip? That's this thing that covers the spoke heads. It can be made out of rubber, plastic, or cotton. Its purpose is to prevent the tube from getting punctured on the spoke heads. Rubber rim strips sometimes split or shift though, and this must be fixed before replacing the tube. Now that you've located the leak, you can either patch the tube or replace it. If replacing it, you'll have to get the right size tube for your wheel. Keep in mind that bicycle tire sizing is a minefield of different standards. No amount of guesswork will get you the right size tube, and don't even think about bringing out a measuring tape. Now on the sidewall of your tire, you'll find up to 3 sizing standards. All of these mean the exact same thing. Put any one of these into a search engine to find the correct tube for your bike. Also, your tube will have one of 3 possible valve types. There's Schrader, Presta, and Woods valves. Confirm that the tube that you order has the right valve on it. If patching the tube, you'll want to rough up the surface with sandpaper until the surface is smooth and no casting lines are in the way. Apply a thin, even layer of the supplied cement and let it dry until smooth and tacky. Once that's done, pull the foil off your patch, press it into the surface, remove the backer, and fill the tube a bit to make sure your new patch doesn't leak. Reinstalling the tube is fairly simple. Inflate it just enough to give it shape, put the valve back in its hole, and tuck the rest of the tube back into the tire. Now you can work the tire bead back on by hand. When it becomes too difficult, install your tire levers like so, and work the rest of the rim over this way. Be careful not to pinch the tube in the process. With the tire seated again, fill it up. Wait a bit to make sure that your installation was a success. Now you can reinstall the front wheel. Slide the axle of the wheel into the dropouts and don't get any washers caught on the inside. If you have a drum or roller brake in front, you'll need to align the hub's torque arm into its slot at the same time. And if you have a generator hub, this is also the time to angle the power leads. If you have a disc brake, guide it carefully into the caliper. It's possible to snag one of the brake pad's removal tabs when installing the wheel. The tabs will usually jiggle back into place. Now you can cinch the wheel back down. With nutted wheels, tighten each side gradually. You'll want to put a little bit of weight on the top of the bike to prevent the axle from walking into dropout slots when tightening it. If the wheel does walk, it'll offset itself in the fork and it'll cause one side of the brakes to rub. Axle-mounted fender stays sit behind the washer if you do have them, and for generator hubs, try holding the leads in place while tightening the left side first. With quick releases, you start the lever in the open position, and you gradually tighten the adjuster on the other side. What you're trying to do is close it just enough that when you close the cam lever on the opposite side, it closes nice and firmly against the bicycle's dropout. If the lever is so tight that you can't close it, ease up on the adjuster and try again. Make sure never to leave the cam lever too loose and never use it as a wing nut. Now you can reconnect your brakes. For caliper brakes, rotate the quick release again, and if you have a pinch bolt, grab the caliper arms together and tighten the cable again. For V-brakes, pull the brake noodle back into the V-brake arm and make sure it seats, and if it has a dust cap, slide that on. For cantilevers, pull the yoke cable back into the brake arm. If you've installed the wheel correctly, brakes of these types should work as they did before, with no rubbing. For drum and roller brakes, slide the adjuster back into its slot and pull the actuating arm back up to seat the pinch bolt. Finally, reconnect your generator hub if you have one. Give the brakes one last test, check to make sure the bead of the tire is nicely seated around the rim's edge, and go for a test ride. Nobody will believe this! Removing the rear wheel requires a few extra steps. Start by disconnecting the rear brakes. For V and caliper brakes, this is the same process as the front. If your rear wheel has a derailleur, that's this thing hanging off the back, shift into the smallest cog. Then undo the quick release or nuts and pull the derailleur backwards so the wheel can come out easily. If your bike has a coaster brake, that is, you pedal backwards on the bike to brake, you'll need to disconnect the torque arm on the left side of the bike. You'll also have to do the same on bikes with rear roller or band brakes. Additionally, if you have a cable like this on the right side, chances are you have an internally geared hub. If so, you also have to disconnect that cable too. There's 3 different designs here and it covers most of the possible scenarios. And if you have a full chain case, you'll have to open the case. Some open at the back and others open in 3 pieces, and this is one case where you probably have to Google which type you have to figure out how to service it. Now you can undo the quick release or nuts and drop the wheel. This process is a bit more involved if your bike has rear-facing axle slots. For these, you'll have to unscrew the axle tensioner so you can push the wheel forward in the slot, drop the chain, and then pull the wheel out of the slots. In some cases, you'll also have to loosen the rear fender to allow the wheel to slide out. Once you have the wheel out, you can replace the tube exactly the way you did the front. Reinstalling the rear wheel can be a bit more involved than the front, but it's still relatively easy. If you have a bike with vertical rear dropouts like these, and a derailleur, work the wheel back up around the derailleur, and then tighten the axle down as you would the front. Check that the derailleur still shifts as it should too. Now if you have rear-facing ends or forward-facing dropouts, you'll have to manually center the rear rim during reinstallation. If you have forward-facing dropouts in a derailleur, you first pull the wheel up to where it was installed before. The scratches on the dropout will guide you. Then you can center the rim while closing the quick release. If you have forward-facing dropouts in a single-speed hub, do the same thing while pulling back on the wheel to maintain chain tension. And if you have a coaster brake, band brake, or roller brake, loosely connect the torque arm to prevent it from spinning. If you have rear-facing ends, use the chain tensioner to help you tension the chain and align the wheel. Bicycles with internally geared hubs will have anti-rotation washers, like this, on either side. Slide them in carefully, making sure that the tab is aligned with the slot on the frame. Now that the wheel's back in, you can reconnect the brakes as you would the front. If your bike has any dropout that isn't vertical, check the fit of your rear brake pads after installing the wheel. Since the rear wheel can be adjusted front to back, the wheel and pads may no longer line up when the wheel is reinstalled. Readjust the pads if necessary. Finally, if you have an internally geared rear hub, you'll need to reconnect the shifter cable and verify the adjustment is correct. This procedure differs between manufacturers and hubs, so do a Google search and check their instructions. And that should do it! Now I realize we went over a whole lot of different things here, different brake systems, different drivetrains, and you're probably thinking, I don't want to have anything to do with this. But in reality, your bicycle only has one drivetrain and at most 2 different types of brakes. It's not that difficult once you know what you're dealing with. And case in point, I learned most of this stuff as a teenager just going online and reading sheldonbrown.com. And if I can do it, you can do it too. And what's more is if you have any questions about what we discussed today, feel free to leave a question in the comment section below and I'll be glad to get back to you and answer them. So in the meantime, stay safe, have a good time riding, and I'll see you out there. Take it easy. Thanks for watching.